Before we get started, I just want to let you know this video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN, obviously. They have an amazing service that I'll tell you more about at the end of the video, but they're offering you 83% off with 3 extra months for free. Just use the promo code Jack Howard and I'll leave the link in the description. Also down there is a link to an hour-long episode of the Kermode on Film podcast where Mark Kermode and myself discuss all the spoilers for Tenet. You can hear me teaching Mark all about the Sator Square, which he knew nothing about.
The Sator Square, or Rotas Square, which appears to be the word Sator backwards. Did you know that?
Yes.
Okay, fine. And the one in the middle is Tenet.
We go really in depth on everything. It's really worth a listen, so there's a link to that in the description, but you can also just search for Kermode on Film on your preferred podcast provider. So, why am I talking about Tenet yet again? Well, I changed my mind. I love it now. This is almost too perfect because it feels like I'm responding to my past self who made my initial review. He'd only seen it twice, whereas I've seen it 4 times. Yeah, that's right, 4 times, and I plan on seeing it for a 5th. I just want to see it big. Lots. I just want to soak that up while I can. We're in uncertain times. I don't know when I'm going to get that again. The 3rd time I saw it, that's when it happened. That's when I knew. And I don't think it should take everyone 3 times, but I don't think my second one should count. Because I initially booked to see it on the Wednesday, the first day that it came out, the earliest showing. But then I was invited to this press screening, and it was at the BFI IMAX, which is the biggest screen in the UK. Not going to turn that down, am I? I had Edgar Wright sitting in front of me, like, directly. I could have reached out and... Obviously I didn't, because that would have been against the guidelines. And also weird pre this. And that press screening was the Tuesday night, the night before that I'd booked, so I ended up seeing it twice in 12 hours, which isn't enough time to process anything. So I don't think it should count. And then like any healthy relationship, I took a bit of space, you know, I felt what I needed to feel, and then I went back when I was ready, and that's when I fell in love. And I know it's not perfect, but I don't need it to be. I've accepted it for exactly what it is. And isn't that what love is? But should you have to see a film multiple times to get it? I think we've all been conditioned to believe that a film should be this one and done experience. We think we should be able to sit down, be told a story, and get what we want from it within that time frame. But I disagree, good sir. And I can already see you typing out a comment, oh, but Jack, isn't it the failure of the filmmaker if they aren't able to communicate their story? Look, I get it. I really do. I get why it's frustrating. But why do we believe that we should be able to experience every film with the same set of rules? It is art, after all. Have you ever listened to an album that you didn't love at first, but then slowly the songs revealed themselves to you? Same thing here. This is Christopher Nolan's 11th film. He knows what he's doing. He made The Dark Knight and Inception. One of those alone allows you to do whatever the fuck you want, but he made both of them 2 years apart from each other. When I watch it, all I see is Christopher Nolan shouting, "They gave me $200 million and I made this because I can." The first time you watch Tenet, the film feels like it moves at a breakneck pace, which is how I described it in my first video. It moves at a breakneck speed, told you, and that's because there's so much information to take in. We're in the opera. What did he say? What's that thing? Oh, the mission's gone wrong. He's dead. No, he isn't. We're at sea. We're on land. Now we're in India. Michael Caine's old, isn't he? She seems sad. What's the painting about? It's a lot. And that's not even to mention all the entropy, temporal pincer, timey-wimey stuff. If you didn't get it on your first watch, it doesn't mean you're stupid, but it also doesn't mean that the film is bad. It's just so heavily layered that of course you can't follow everything the first time, and I don't think that's a mistake. I don't think that's a problem with the filmmaking because it's built into the design. For example, in any other time travel story, I think we would have revisited the opening sequence in the opera. The first time we saw that reversing bullet, we would have realised it was Neil all along, but Nolan purposefully doesn't do this because he knows that we're going to do it ourselves. Nolan has made the experience of rewatching a film feel like time travel. At the end of the film, Neil says, "I'll see you at the beginning, friend," and then you, as the viewer, for all intents and purposes, rewind the events of the film and experience them again. What's happened, but it's different. You think about the events differently. It's constantly playing with your experience of time, which I don't know if you know this, but Nolan likes doing that. It cuts from India to London to Norway to Italy to Estonia without explaining how we got there. Conversations seem to continue across time and place. The sequence in the shipping container when they're going back in time to Oslo, we cut between Neil laying down asleep to him sitting up awake in an edit that feels like it's connected by the shipping container rocking, but those moments could be happening days apart from each other. And that breakneck pace that I mentioned didn't feel as intense watching it again, and I found it easier to emotionally invest in. And that's a big complaint about Nolan's movies in general, that he makes cold films, which I don't agree with. I think that there's a difference between emotional and sentimental. He doesn't make sentimental films, although he tried with Interstellar, and everything that Anne Hathaway says is dumb. No, not a fan. I think in Tenet, the choices that the characters make and their motivations are all led by emotions. He's just not telling you what to feel. I did initially think that this was a very mechanical film, but the themes have revealed themselves to me over time. And to me, it's a film about how our experiences and the people that we interact with shape who we'll become, good and bad. When we meet Kat at the start of the film, the trauma and the abuse that she suffers at the hands of Sator defines who she is. It makes her feel weak and helpless. She wishes that she could be as free as the woman that she saw diving off that boat, but what she doesn't know is that in that moment, she already is that woman. She's always had that strength within her, but it takes revisiting that moment of trauma to realise that that's who she is. And when she reveals that physical scar at the end of the film, she seems to wear it with pride, demonstrating that she's accepted how Sator's abuse has changed her, but will no longer let it define her. And you could define trauma as your future self dealing with something that happened to you in your past. Throughout the film, Neil teaches the protagonist the rules of Tenet before it's revealed that the protagonist is the one who set the whole thing up in the first place. We find out that Neil is just passing on what he's learned from the protagonist in his past, or what will become the protagonist's future. Oh no, I've gone cross-eyed. The protagonist wouldn't have created Tenet the way that he did if it wasn't for Neil's influence, but Neil wouldn't have known what he knows without the protagonist. The protagonist is going to become the person that Neil knows because of Neil. It's a time paradox, but it's also about how these two characters are informing and shaping each other. I like thinking about them like Doc Brown and Marty McFly. At the start of Back to the Future, we don't really question why this 17-year-old is friends with this old man. How did that happen? Well, technically, the first time that they meet is in 1955 when Marty goes back in time. Doc Brown doesn't know Marty yet, but Marty knows Doc Brown. I love the wider implication of Neil and the protagonist as well, that they're going to be this time-travelling duo stopping crimes from happening before they do. The idea of seeing that in a sequel, it does get me quite jazzed. There's even a moment when the protagonist goes to see Priya, the last time we see her before he kills her, and she says, "Where's Neil?" Like, she's used to them both being there together. And it's the little details that I like thinking about. Like, I think we can assume that the reason why Neil has a degree in physics is because the protagonist is going to tell him to get a degree in physics. Hello, it's Jack from the edit. I mean, from the future. Technically, that's true. I just realised that that's definitely a movie I want to see. Old John David Washington trying to get a teenage Robert Pattinson to study nuclear physics. But I don't want to study nuclear physics. Well, you're gonna. You're not my dad. It's for the future. My friends all say you're crazy. I just thought that was really funny and I wanted to share it with you. I think this is the first film to deal with time travel, aside from maybe Arrival and Looper, that doesn't lean on previous films to define how time travel works. And they keep telling us we have to think about time in a new way. We have to stop thinking in linear terms. The timeline of the film is 10 days forwards and 10 days back. Tenet. The opera at the beginning and the battle at the end are actually happening simultaneously, which means that at the start of the film, technically, the world is already saved. But as Neil says at the end of the film, that's not an excuse to do nothing. And on that day, Neil saves the protagonist's life twice in two different places and sacrifices his own life. Neil has accepted that he has a small role in something much bigger. We know he's already dead, but we need to see him make the choice to go back and die in order to save the world. You're telling me that's not emotional? Also, the audacity, the unmitigated gall of Christopher Nolan to take one of the most famous lines in cinema history,
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship,
and repurpose it here is so bold, and yet I think he totally gets away with it. I like how ambiguous Neil's ending is too. He says, "You have a future in the past, years ago for me, years from now for you." So was Neil talking about the literal past or just his own past, which could be the future? Which leads me on to the internet's new favourite theory: is Neil the older version of Max? I'm not sure if I buy it, and frankly I think you're all jumping through some pretty big hoops to get that Maximilian thing to work. For those of you who have missed this, the internet have discovered that if you take the less traditional spelling of Maximilian, spelt with an E instead of an A, and then reverse it, the first four letters would spell Neil. But the reason I don't fully buy it is because I don't think it changes much about the story either way. It's a fun thing to think about, like if Neil is Max, he's nursing his own mother back to health after she's been shot, which is a really nice idea, but nothing about Robert Pattinson Pattinson's performance is telling me that that's what's happening. But that might have something to do with the rules of Tenet, because the policy is to suppress, and ignorance is our ammunition, and lying is standard operating procedure. So who knows? Maybe. I just don't know if I buy it. The last thing that I want to talk about here, and there's obviously so much to talk about, but I couldn't fit it all into one video. It was hurting my brain to write it, so I can't imagine how it was for Christopher Nolan to actually create it. This is a very Nolan specific thing. It's not a theory or anything like that. It's just something I find interesting. In most of his films, when we cut to black at the end, the first thing that we see is the title. However, in Tenet, it's at the beginning, after the protagonist takes the cyanide capsule and kills himself. And because the beginning is the end, part of me thinks that we could be seeing like a reordered version of events or something, and the protagonist does die. I don't know, it's not fully formed in my mind yet, but let me know if you thought about this as well, or if it's just me, or if you've got any of your own thoughts about this delicious puzzle of a film. Let me know in the comments. I'll be down there discussing it with you. Thank you to Surfshark VPN for sponsoring this video. You can use Surfshark to help you with your data protection, but also it allows you to change your location so that you can enjoy content from around the globe, wherever you are. They're offering you 83% off with 3 extra months for free, so just use the promo code Jack Howard, and I'll leave the link in the description. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, get the hell out of my room.